Welcome everybody back into NerdSesh. As always, I'm Carson Bradford. Alongside me is Logan Camden. And if you are listening to this episode on audio, what you just heard is a listener-submitted rendition of the NerdSesh theme song. Shout out to Zach for absolutely cooking. I heard that. It fired me up, Logan. It's jazzy. It's sensual. It's everything we stand for.
I love those ambient sounds, man. That's what really got me. Felt like I was right on the court, man.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. So shout out to Zach for that. We appreciate it. If anybody wants to send us more stuff, please stop with the pictures of your balls. We've gotten enough. Well, Logan.
Those are my favorite.
Okay, never mind. So go ahead and proceed with those, whatever you guys feel like. But personally, I think that this version of the NerdSesh theme kind of clears the ball picks. We are going to move on to other business today, because we are going to be ranking our top 10 NFL contenders. We've already given a hot take about every single team in the league. Now we are getting down to making the distinctions between the best of the best. So before we get into the number 10 spot, Logan, who would you say was your toughest cut from this list? Because there's one team I left off that I think might be pretty controversial.
You know, I didn't have any excruciating cuts. I didn't feel like to me, when I was making this list, you really had to check two major boxes for me. One, you need to have a quarterback that I believe in that can go on a playoff run. I feel like that can just get beaten into the ground when we're talking about real deal contenders, but it is such an important prerequisite that if you don't have that guy, I just couldn't have you on my list. And then you just need to have, obviously, a supporting cast good enough to crack the list around them, right? The Cowboys, for example, right? They have an A-tier offense, and I would consider them, like Dak, to be over that threshold to where I could see him going on a run, right? But I just don't like the Cowboys enough around them. There's another team. The Buccaneers would have probably been my toughest cut.
Wow.
I actually think that they're probably more likely to, and you're going to see this if you've seen our AFC or NFC hot takes video. I may have some logical inconsistencies when it comes to teams who win the division versus teams who I think are better contenders. So there may not be a catch-all. You may have seen my Super Bowl prediction and the teams that I have going there. I may have teams above them.
Sure.
I'm still going to go with the team that I think has the objective best chance to get to the Super Bowl. That is how I am dictating these contenders, despite my picks. All that being said, so I may have some things that are inconsistencies. I would have the Bucs above the Falcons, and they were probably the toughest cut for me. Them, and they're a team that I would generally consider on the cut. And then we get into the Steelers, who I think are a very, very flawed football team. I think the Broncos offense isn't good enough. I think the Falcons defense, I don't really believe in enough to put them on this list. So, there are teams that were close for me, but I'm pretty confident with the 10 teams that I decided on.
So that's really interesting because, Logan, at this point, I'm the Bucs fan on NerdSesh, okay? I've taken that crown from you because clearly I'm just much higher on them. You can still have your Baker love. I would
Actually,
never take that from you.
Sorry, last team I would no, you could never love Baker and the Bucs more than me.
Well, the Bucs, not Baker.
The Vikings would be probably the last honorable mention that I would have because I don't have them here. It's just I mean, if J.J. McCarthy did it, it would just be historic. I couldn't see it.
Logan, I am so interested in your list because we have clearly a couple of differences already. I won't spoil exactly which teams I have on my list, but I will say the one team who we are both cutting that I think will be very controversial is the Denver Broncos. They were my toughest cut. I've seen a lot of people talking about the Broncos as if they are a top 5 team, as if they are a Super Bowl contender.
Do you want to get it out the way? I mean, I feel like it's literally just me and your opinion, and the difference in opinion versus the consensus on Bo Nix is really what it is. I think people are probably projecting Bo Nix to get even better. If Bo Nix got better, I wouldn't be surprised. If he improved on the numbers that he put up last season, I would be shocked.
Yeah, I also think it probably just comes down to a difference in evaluation of the whole offense. Some of that definitely has to do with Bo Nix, but I think if you actually look at how Denver last year performed on offense against actual good teams, it was already very concerning. Like, they played 7 games against top 12 scoring defenses last year. That's excluding when they played the Chiefs' literal second stringers in a meaningless Week 18 game. And in those games, Denver averaged 14 points. They also just flat out went 1-8 against teams with winning records, again, excluding that nonsense Chiefs game against the second stringers. So this is a team that was already generating a lot of buzz last year that I did feel was kind of undue. I do think they were getting overrated. And then we get into the playoffs and like they were a super buzzy upset pick against the Bills. And I was like, guys, the Bills are going to beat the Broncos by 24 points. And then the Bills beat the Broncos by 24 points. So I do think Denver's in for a really good regular season because I think they did a really nice job this offseason. Like, they were already in the playoffs, and yeah, they got destroyed in the first round, but they made it there. Their defense, which was already up there for the best in the NFL, got even better with the addition of a Hufanga, with the addition of a Dre Greenlaw. And I think that they have the ability to be elite at pretty much everything defensively. I think it's a ferocious pass rush. I think it's an elite secondary. They were really good defending the run last year. So that's where they do have the potential to like jump on certain teams and just suffocate their offenses with this elite defense. And that's a good regular season formula, especially when you have a really good scheme, you have a really good coach in Sean Payton, you have a really good offensive line. That's how Denver could rack up 11, maybe 12 wins in the regular season. But it just comes down to kind of what you laid out. It is so important for me when it comes to thinking about a team that can make a playoff run, that they check a few boxes. One of those is coaching. Denver has that. One of those is defense, specifically a pass rush. Denver has that. But maybe the most important is quarterback play. And Bo Nix is just well below the threshold of what I think is needed. I think he still really, really struggled under pressure last year. Some deeply concerning numbers there. And overall, like, the line is really good. But again, this offense just kind of melted down against good competition, and they weren't efficient in the run game consistently. They've added Evan Engram as a pass catcher. I still don't view this as a high-level group of weapons. And with Bo's limitations, I just have too many concerns about the offense to see them reeling off multiple playoff wins against really good teams. I'm not going to say they can't do it because the roster is really, really good, but I do think there's kind of been a sanitization of how Denver actually looked against good teams last year, people wiping that away and just saying, okay, here we go. They're taking that leap to top tier contention when they really weren't close last year.
I could see Denver getting on this list.
Yeah.
I mean, like at some point during the season. I wouldn't rule that out. I wouldn't rule out marginal improvement from Bo in the offense, but that is where I draw the line. I just haven't seen it enough in high leverage, high stakes situations with Bo to really believe in him. So, I mean, I wouldn't put them in the same tier as like a Minnesota because I think Minnesota's a little bit better, but I do look at those teams as kind of similar in their formulas and how they're going to win games. Strong in the trenches, strong defense, and then, you're just hoping your quarterback can manage games. And I don't feel like I have a game manager on my list. I feel like all of these guys are legitimate elevators and quarterbacks I believe in. And so I know people are probably tired of us, if you've been following us since last season, us talk about Bo Nix and the Broncos this way, but it is how we feel. And I just don't view them in that upper echelon of contenders just yet.
I agree. So with that, who is in your 10 spot, Logan?
Yeah, so considering how you feel about this football team, I kind of know that they're not going to be on your list. I have the Houston Texans in my 10 spot, and a lot of this does come down to my belief in the quarterback play. I'm very high on C.J. Stroud. I'm very high on him having a bounce-back campaign after a letdown sophomore season. I thought the offensive line play was atrocious. I don't know how much they're going to get better this year. I don't know if they could get any worse. If they do, C.J. Stroud's
losing Laramie Tunsil's about as good a strategy to get worse as they could have taken.
I mean, we're going to find out. If they do get worse, C.J. Stroud's probably going to die. So I really hope that doesn't happen.
Him and Matt Stafford in the same year?
But even though, I don't really like the offensive line that much, I do think this should be a better offense than last season. Nico Collins got injured mid-season. I think Nico Collins is an absolute stud, one of the top 10 receivers in the NFL now. They add Christian Kirk, who I'm not super high on. And they've got a decent receiving core. I wish Tank Dell would be back for this season. He's probably going to miss the entire year. But, this was a serviceable offense last season. Really, it's the two position groups that I think are most important in the NFL is why the Texans are on here. I think they have an elite pass rush with the combination of Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter and a good run-stuffing unit up front. I really like the front seven. I think the secondary is above average. I think they added, C.J. Gardner-Johnson this offseason. I think him and Stingley should be potent back there. Lassiter was good last year too. So I really like the defense. I think this should be a top 10 to fringe top 10 unit, and I think the offense should be average to above average. Those are my expectations for Houston this year, and considering some of the flaws of some other teams, I just like the Texans formula a little bit more. And comparing them to a team like the Buccaneers, who I just left off, I marginally prefer the Texans defense. I definitely prefer the Bucs offense. I think that's the case. The Bucs could just be explosive this season, but I do marginally prefer C.J. Stroud to a guy like Baker Mayfield, even though I do love Baker, and so that's what gives them the edge. I believe in the defense a little bit more, and I would take C.J. So I'm expecting a bounce back year from him in this offense, and I think the defense is going to be just as solid and ferocious as they were last year. So, they can't be higher just because I just kind of think this is where the Texans are at. There are quarterbacks I believe in more, and there are teams that I think are better top to bottom. And considering the rest of the teams on this list, I think the Texans have probably the worst offensive line out of any team that we're going to talk about today.
Brother, they have the worst offensive line in football. They have the worst offensive line of any team that we could talk about. I mean, they were already in that bottom tier, and then they lost clearly their best offensive lineman in Tunsil. That is just what terrifies me about Houston. So as you hinted at, I'm lower on them. I actually have them missing the playoffs entirely, even though they actually do check a couple of the boxes I was talking about. I do like CJ. I think he is a fringe top 10 level quarterback. I think this pass rush is excellent, one of the best in football. I also think this secondary is really damn good, and they add CJ Gardner-Johnson to a group that was already very good. So that's what I like about the Texans, and that's where they do have the potential to do what they did last year, right? And just overwhelm the Chargers with that pass rush, win a playoff game. CJ plays well. The problem is just I think the offensive line is such a disaster that I think the offense is going to be well below average, because that's what it was last year. They were 24th in points per drive. It was a consistent struggle to run the ball consistently. They were banged up in the receiving core, but I don't think the receiving core is that good this year, especially outside of Nico Collins. I think it's actually pretty lacking. So there's just so much on CJ's shoulders. I don't view it as a sustainable formula for 18 weeks. I think that fatal flaw is the offensive line. And by a lot of metrics, Houston was just pretty mediocre for a lot of last year. 5-6 outside their division, 5-6 in their last 11 regular season games. I'm not denying the pass rush CJ combo, but that's all they have going for them. And it's not enough compared to just some rosters that are a lot more talented, because I still don't think that CJ can carry this offense on his own to where they need to go to be a top 10 contender.
I mean, they've got Dalton Schultz coming back. He's solid. If Mixon's ready to go, I think they should be able to run the ball between the tackles a little bit. Do you like the Broncos more than the Texans?
Yeah, I do, because I think the Broncos are a loaded roster, and quarterback is the only thing holding me back from being pretty much all in on them. Not just quarterback, there's other stuff with the offense, just the overall passing game, I would probably say, and even the run game wasn't that effective. But it is valuable to me to be that stacked defensively and to be great in the trenches and to have a really great offensive scheme. And that's where I think the Texans don't have that scheme aspect. I didn't love their play calling this past year. I think they put CJ in a lot of really tough spots, and that's just going to remain the case when you're not running the ball super successfully and your offensive line is getting discarded with ease over and over and over again. It's tough to win games like that consistently.
I think this offense is going to be better than you expect. I think CJ is going to have a much better year. I think this offense lost some dynamism when Nico Collins went out. And, okay. I think this is probably one of our biggest gaps between thoughts on teams probably this year.
I mean, I would say Nico came back and the offense still just wasn't very good. And if they had Tank healthy, maybe it'd be a different conversation, but they don't have Tank healthy. So Texans, honestly, not even one of my couple of toughest cuts. In my 10 spot, I have the team that actually Houston beat in the playoffs. I have the Chargers. And the reason that I am more in on LA is they check some of those same key boxes. I really like their coach, Jim Harbaugh. I really like their defense. I think even if they don't have like eye-popping top-level talent, they are such an elite execution defense. They are so fundamentally sound that they were the number one scoring defense in football last year, and I don't think that they replicate that, but I think they're a top 10 kind of defense. And then they have an elite quarterback, a quarterback who I do trust more than CJ Stroud, who I do view as being another level up. I am a big-time Justin Herbert believer. I'm not afraid to shout about it from the rooftops. I think that he actually had a great regular season last year, did an incredible job of taking care of the football, doing what was needed of him within that offense with a very limited group of weapons, with an interior offensive line that was flawed. And now this year, I'm expecting bigger things from year 2 lad. I like the addition of Keenan Allen, bringing him back. I think you have to temper your expectations for him at this point, but I like him a fair bit more than Quentin Johnston, and so any upgrades to that receiving room do matter to me. I like what they've done drafting Omarion Hampton, like bringing in some running back talent. My one hesitation with this team is the loss of Slater for the season, just because I think that elite tackle tandem was going to be a nice foundation for this offense. And like if they had both Slater and Alt healthy and they bring in Mekhi Becton, then I think this offensive line would be looking a fair bit better than last year. I still like the Becton addition a lot. The Slater loss does hurt. But when it comes down to it, like I just think the Chargers did a lot of the things they needed to put themselves in position to win a playoff game last year. Like they were a very successful regular season football team on the back of that defense, on the back of Herbert doing what he did, holding this offense together, being excellent situationally, basically just carrying the passing attack, never turning the football over. And then they got into the playoffs and they kind of played the worst game possible. But I think a lot of that had to do with them definitely being overwhelmed by the Texans' front and defense and their pass rush. And also, I just think Herbert kind of played the worst game that he possibly could have. I have a lot more faith in him coming back and not just playing better than that, being a guy who does have the arm talent, who does have the processing, who does have the physical tools and the creation to go toe-to-toe with the best quarterbacks in football. And that's a really valuable thing to have when it comes to making something of a playoff run when you also have a really good defense. So I can't go higher on this with the Chargers just because I still don't love the offensive infrastructure around him. And I don't view this as like a top-tier defense, but I think they're a really good team.
Yeah, I do too. I have the Chargers in my 9 spot. I think mid-season to get them to climb higher, I think I'd have to see a different level of explosivity and volatility out of this offense. And I do think the defense is going to regress a little bit, like slightly. I still like the fact that they have Harbaugh like leading the group out, and I love a guy like Khalil Mack. I think the real star of the show is Daiyan Henley in the middle of this defense. He's the stud, the guy that makes all this work to me. I think the defensive line is going to regress a little bit with the loss of Bosa. And then I am worried about the cornerback play for the Chargers, just considering that, I think their lead corners are Dante Jackson and Cam Hart. And it's like, Dante Jackson was a good Steeler. Shout out to him. I've never really looked at Dante Jackson as like a lead cornerback. I think in your best scenario, he is a nickel kind of slot guy. So, I mean, he's solid, but those are the areas of concern, I think, for me. Again, I think the thing that could kick this team up a notch and that could have them climbing throughout the season is if we see this offense is more explosive and potent than last year, right? This team had a really rigid formula of how they won games. It was ball control. They didn't turn the ball over. Herbert had 3 picks all of last year. It's that kind of formula. It's a very Steelers-esque formula, and I think it's very rigid. And I think when you have to win football games like that, you just have to follow such a specific game script to win games. And I feel like the playoffs, I don't want to, extrapolate too much from that game, but it's like when you do dig yourself a big hole or something like that, I do worry about if the Chargers get into games like that and they would have to win some game like that. But if the offense does take a leap with Hampton, because I'm not very high on Najee Harris, I think I kind of know what Najee is at this point. I think Hampton will probably be better in year one than Najee is. I don't know why they're even bothering starting the guy. But McConkey, I expect to get better. I just don't see this as like an explosive or volatile offense. I think this team is going to have to methodically move the ball, win on early downs, convert third downs, have long drives. I just don't see a very explosive offense, even though they do have a guy like Justin Herbert. I feel like they're missing one more piece, if that is a really good tight end or another really good receiver. Like they're missing a real high skill position difference maker for me. And unless one of these guys morphs into that or we see the offense take a leap in totality, I think the Chargers work right here. Those are the flaws to me with LA.
Yeah, I don't disagree in the sense that this was not an explosive offense. I just don't think that they have the weapons to do that. I don't think they had the consistent all-around offensive line play to be that. But the distinction I would make between them and like a Steelers-esque kind of formula, as you compared it to, is that they do have a Justin Herbert. They do have a quarterback who can go out there and make big-time throws, big-time plays on third down, be consistently
I don't know. I
think
we're going to have to. I think we're going to have to see that again this year. And I'm not saying that Herbert didn't execute. I thought he managed games really well and, controlled football games. But, and I don't even put that on, like, Herbert. I just, I don't even – ironically, I don't think it's his fault. I literally just don't think they have the guys around him to make this a special kind. Like, even if Herbert plays as well as he can, I just don't think they have the personnel.
But I do think that what Herbert did last year was underrated because even though like the raw volume wasn't as monstrous as we're used to, like the efficiency was absolutely elite and he was so pivotal. He was this offense. Like when it came down to situational stuff, the Chargers being one of the better third down offenses, them being an above average offense overall when they did have questionable line, below average weapons. They liked to run the ball, but they were not efficient in the run game at all. Like Herbert is the reason they still ended up above water as an offense. He did it for 17 weeks. I am somebody who believes that means he's capable of doing it for 1 or 2 or 3 weeks in the postseason too. I just think he played a really bad game this time around, but we don't have nearly the sample size to say, oh, Justin Herbert is a playoff dropper. I think that stuff is kind of silly. So we're pretty similar in how we view the Chargers. In my number 9 spot, I have the Minnesota Vikings, who you mentioned, not on your list. I understand why, because I also have a number of questions and reservations about J.J. McCarthy. That's why I don't view them as like a true contender when you're looking at like the 9-10 spots, right? I don't think that you're in those real contender conversations. But I do think that this roster is sick. I think it's one of the best situations you could ever drop a young quarterback into, where he has an elite play caller, where he has the best receiver in the game and one of the best overall groups of pass catchers in the game. He has an offensive line that is looking dramatically improved. Darisaw back and healthy. Bring in Ryan Kelly. Bring in Will Fries. They're going to try to run the ball a lot on early downs to set up the play action. They're going to try to run the ball a little bit more efficiently than they did last year, and I think they could do that with a better offensive line. And then on top of that, they have this elite defense where that front seven is ridiculous. They even added talent there. They've got Brian Flores, who's going to dial up some diabolical blitzes. Like, they're going to get a ton of pressure. The run defense was great. The secondary is still solid. They're a really great all-around football team. I don't think J.J. McCarthy can replicate what Sam Darnold did last year, even though Darnold had his flaws, being somebody who was so prone to holding onto the ball, taking some really bad sacks. He still gave you, throughout the regular season, pretty elite production, was a really, really effective play-action quarterback, which is such an important aspect of this offense. And I just need to see how J.J. McCarthy handles pressure. How is he seeing the field? How's his processing, his anticipation? Like, there's a lot of questions with him that, again, give me some pause with this team. But they won 14 games, and their roster overall on paper got better. So that's why I think they still belong in my top 10. Because, compared to Denver, I think those are both surefire elite defenses. I think the offensive infrastructure that Minnesota has is significantly better, though, if you're dropping in, sort of an unknown commodity. And JJ is more of an unknown than Bo Nix. But I view them both as liabilities as quarterbacks when we're talking about teams with contending aspirations, Minnesota can do a better job of propping that guy up overall, I think.
Yeah, I think you said it well. I mean, Minnesota to me has the highest chance of any team to get onto my list, mid-season, just because of the defense, which I expect to be near the top of the league with Brian Flores and their elite personnel. I mean, the fucking Vikings have a Pro Bowl / All-Pro kind of defense. Like, it's actually ridiculous. And then you combine that with the fact that they do have really good offensive infrastructure. The line is solid. The skill position guys are solid. Justin Jefferson is the best receiver in the game. The thing that makes me pause with optimism for McCarthy and the Vikings are a couple of things. One, the fact that he had an entire year to sit behind Sam Darnold and learn the offense and more time to learn the playbook. And like some of these traditional things that rookie quarterbacks may struggle with, McCarthy should actually be further along than most of them because he's had that extra year and he didn't have any of that pressure on him to step in. Two, there is a dynamic of McCarthy's game that Sam Darnold didn't have whatsoever, and that is mobility. Like if McCarthy can prove that he can, do some stuff out of structure and scrambling and, winning, and I'm going to say this, I don't mean like Jaden Daniels, but like how Jaden Daniels will routinely get his team into better situations, third and manageable, fourth and manageable,
or
winning.
On third down, he's a guy who, if you need 5, he can get that for you in spots. Like that's
exactly.
the kind of mobility you're probably
in
going to
avoiding
get from JJ.
in avoiding catastrophic sacks and little stuff like that, where I do think McCarthy could be better than Darnold. So, I'm kind of at just like a pause with the Vikings right now. Like, I'm not saying that they're not contenders. I just haven't seen McCarthy play in a real NFL game yet, and I wouldn't feel right putting a guy I haven't seen take a real snap, to be the leader of a team that is on this list. But I think the Vikings, even more so than Tampa Bay because of their roster top to bottom, are probably the most likely team to get on this list for me when the season begins. So I'm not out on the Vikings by any means. I think McCarthy's preseason debut is pretty encouraging. I like the way he dealt with pressure. I like the way he moved and manipulated and operated in the pocket. So time will tell. But I'm a little bit more optimistic than about JJ than I was last time we spoke. So I'm waiting and seeing. It's a little bit of a cop-out here on the Vikings, but I'm waiting and seeing. I really do like their team top to bottom, though. So I understand you having them here.
The one thing that I will say, you can't really overstate, even though Minnesota really liked running the ball last year, they didn't do so efficiently. And so a lot of it was, okay, can we set up the play action game? But even though it was a really good situation for Darnold, there was a pretty decent burden on him as a passer to actually kind of be the engine of the offense, or on the passing attack as a whole to be the strength of the offense. And can McCarthy fill those shoes? Probably not, which is why I do think the Vikings take a little bit of a step back, but I still think they're a really good football team. So they are on my list. Who's in your 8 spot, Logan?
I have got the Los Angeles Rams here in my 8 spot. And
Twin.
I could see the Rams. I feel really similarly about the Rams. I could see the Rams getting higher on this list. Honestly, it's just a question of Matt Stafford. I love how the Rams have rebuilt and retooled this defense. I think they hit home runs in the draft last year, especially with Fisk is good, but Jared Verse is the guy. Verse, I think, led the NFL in pressures last season, which is ridiculous for a rookie to do. And just considering where they were coming from, the Rams went all in on their Super Bowl window going out. They got Jalen Ramsey. They paid all these big-time difference makers on their defense. And then what comes with that, giving up all that capital and all that space, is you have to rapidly retool this team in a way that a lot of teams don't have to. They had more undrafted rookies and undrafted free agents on their team last year than any other team in football. And so I just want to commend the Rams front office for how they've rebuilt this defense and this team. And I expect them to get even better next year. This was a team that was kind of thrown together, a full off season of these guys together and to get ready for the year. I think the defense should get better, and then I think the offense is primed to get better too. Catastrophically ravaged by offensive line injuries last season, had so many different starting combinations, and yet Kyron Williams still ran the hell out of the ball really well. Matt Stafford put the offense on his back when they needed and produced. And I thought Cooper Kupp was pretty bad. I think Cooper Kupp has fallen from where he was as a Triple Crown receiver. I think Devontae Adams is going to step in here and be better than Cooper Kupp was last year. And so I think the offense should take a marginal step up. The only concern I have right now about this team really is Matt Stafford and just how great the defense can be. But if Stafford looks good, hell, man, I could see the Rams talking me back into another top 5 case. I could definitely see it. Like, if Stafford is who he was last year and, the back injury really isn't affecting him at all, I could definitely see the Rams being a little bit higher on this list.
Yeah, I don't know if the roster is quite talented enough for them to be in the top 5. In fact, I think that it's just like a signal of respect to have them in the top 10, and they've earned that, but this is not a team that is ever like going to cruise through the regular season, win a bunch of games, blow a bunch of teams out. Like, if you look at the last couple years, they've been pretty similar in the sense that the Rams start slow, and then they finish the year red hot. 2023, they win 7 out of their last 8 regular season games, almost beat a great Detroit team in the playoffs. Then last year, start slow, win 9 of their last 12 regular season games, then destroy a 14-win Minnesota team in the playoffs and push Philly much harder than anybody else did in that playoff run. So they are kind of the epitome of checking the playoff boxes that I've already talked about a couple times that I really look for. Sean McVay is an elite coach. Stafford, to me, is still a top 6 quarterback in the NFL, and he really shows that in these big-time games. And the defense, you couldn't even say was good throughout last regular season because by a lot of metrics, like, they actually ranked closer to the bottom of the league. But they caught fire at the right time as a defense that was trending upwards, finished the year really strong, held 4 of their last 6 opponents to single digits, and the strength of this defense is a young pass rush. And if you can really get after the quarterback, you have an ability to cause havoc and to cover up for some other issues that this team did have where they weren't a very good run defense. Their secondary was just okay. Linebackers, something of a question, definitely. But that pass rush is very legit, and they showed up in a big-time spot for this team last year. I think that defense is trending up overall. I think the offense should be healthier. Offensive line was banged up last year. I think the run game will be more consistently efficient with a healthier O-line. I think that Devontae is a significant upgrade from Kupp, and not just that. I think Puka and Devontae should be healthier. Like, for all these reasons, I just think if you look at the bottom-line metrics from last year, they sell the Rams short, and they sell what the Rams can be this year short. They are a team you don't want to see come playoff time. You don't want to see Sean McVay. You probably don't want to see this pass rush. You don't want to see Matt Stafford with that arm talent, with his ability to execute, process the game. That's why I like the Rams. That's right. With his big old fake chomper, he's going to bite your kneecaps. Rams are scary, and that's why I think they belong here.
I do too.
But like I said, I also don't think they're loaded enough to be higher. And there is a reason that even though they've been scary the last 2 years and they've gotten hot at the right time, they have started slow. And they have won just the one playoff game across those 2 years. Like, they're not in the juggernaut tier, but they are like the definition of a scary, scrappy, wild card round divisional kind of team.
Yeah, they are. But, I mean, I could see the Rams going on a run. Anytime you've got a guy like Matt Stafford, I can see your team going on a run, man. He's one of those legitimate difference makers. Ironically, the Rams are in my 8 spot because of their quarterback play, and I think the team in my 7 spot is here. They could be much higher if their quarterback was more consistent. And I've got the Packers here in my 7 spot, and it really is just, again, we say this all the time with Jordan Love, but it really is just consistency. Like, I buy into a lot about this roster. I think the offensive line is really solid. I think they're primed to get better with the addition of Aaron Banks. I thought we saw last year a new dynamic that Jordan Love hadn't had in his short tenure, them being able to genuinely establish the run and give the ball to Josh Jacobs and let him eat up some volume for this offense and produce. I think the defense is really well-rounded. Now, I think they have a glaring weak spot at cornerback that I'm very worried about after the loss of Jair Alexander. If there's one red flag of a position group for Green Bay, I would say it's the cornerback position. But they're so young and they're so talented basically everywhere across the board. This roster is just really good. They could be higher if I believed more in Jordan Love. I just think sometimes he can have a little bit too much of that gunslinger in him and try to do too much. I think we saw that in his first playoff appearance. Not the first game, the one against the Niners in his first year as the starting quarterback, because he dusted them Cowboys. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. He put belt to ass on them boys. Mm-hmm. But it really is just Jordan Love. The team in my 6th spot, I think, does not have as loaded a roster as Green Bay does, but I just definitively believe in their quarterback and their offense more. So, again, the Packers, I feel like, could be higher, too, if Jordan Love shows us some stuff. And maybe Matthew Golden can kick this offense up a notch, and they're, just more consistent. Again, I always come back to that word with Jordan Love, but it really is the truth. I need to see him put it together for the entirety of a season, just not Toyota-thon. Come on, Jordan.
Right.
Like, just, before games, pray to the football gods and just say, just get into that space where you just imagine.
Pray to the Toyota executives, bro. Just ask them to extend it. Make it a 5-month affair. Why not?
But see, like it's a state of mind. It's a state of consciousness. I think Jordan Love can reach that Toyota-thon bliss without it even having to be Toyota-thon.
I don't know if he can. I think he might just be a Toyota-thon merchant. I think they should just make it longer.
If he just imagined that he was whipping in the brand new 2026 Toyota Camry. With great gas mileage. Yeah, he just needs to get there, man. If he could get there, I think he'd be great. I think he'd throw 50 touchdowns and 0 interceptions.
America's best-selling sedan for the last 25 years, the Toyota Camry. Not a sponsor. I am a little higher on the Packers than you, and I think a lot of that is I'm just higher on Jordan Love. And I see what you're saying. Last 2 years have been similar in the sense that Jordan Love has an MVP-level stretch and Jordan Love has a below-average stretch. And a big difference between those two outcomes is his decision making. Is he playing super clean, efficient football? Is he making some erratic decisions and turning the football over? That can kind of be the determining factor for the level he's at and where the Packers can go as a football team. But I do like a lot, and I talked about this when I gave the hot take of picking them to win the division over Detroit, but they just did so much so well last year. And if you compare them to 2023, like you talk about them improving the run game. The run game was already a foundation of this offense. Like, it's just such important to a LaFleur offense. He wants to be able to run the ball down your throat. When you think about the Packers lighting up the Cowboys, a huge part of that was just Dallas's inability to stop the run, that opening up explosive passing plays because they were just gaining chunk after chunk on the ground. But this year, they took a level up, right? They were one of the elite rushing attacks in football. Josh Jacobs was one of the elite running backs in football. And they also improved defensively. Like, the safety improvement was so dramatic. McKinney is a flat-out star for this defense. And so, in so many ways, they were 3rd in passing efficiency, 6th in rushing efficiency, 3rd in rushing defensive efficiency, 11th in passing defensive efficiency. This is all just by yards per attempt or net yards per attempt for the passing numbers. They went 11-2 against everybody other than the Vikings and the Lions within their division. And even those losses were all pretty close. But they couldn't get over the hump against those elite teams. And to some extent, that is still my reservation, where I have the Packers at 5, but there is a gap between them and my top 4. Like, there is just something lacking from this team when it comes to me elevating them into like those real big time Super Bowl contender kind of conversations. And the biggest thing is just the lack of an elite pass rusher. Like, this defense is still good. They can't be in my inner circle without like a real disruptor on that side of the ball. Rashawn Gary is good. He's not that guy. Van Ness has not panned out as they would have hoped. He'd have to get a lot better to be a meaningful difference maker at this point. So that's what holds me back. But I'm high on them because I think LaFleur is a top-tier offensive coach. I think the run game is phenomenal. And I think Jordan Love is going to improve this year. I think he might even flirt with some outside MVP kind of talks this year. I think the addition of a first-round pick receiver like Matthew Golden matters. That's been the other thing missing from this team. Talked about this last episode too, but the lack of stars or superstars at some of those key positions, a receiver, an edge, they haven't had that. I'm not saying Golden's going to be that as a rookie, but it's a significant talent injection. And I also just think, like, Love is 26. He's had 2 years as a starter. He showed such high highs. The only thing he needs to iron out is the consistency, the decision-making. He's got incredible physical tools. He's already phenomenal when it comes to not taking sacks. He's got the arm. He's got the mobility. He's got the great coach. Like, you give him another high-end receiving talent. I think he can put it together more consistently. And overall, if I'm not mistaken, this is the third year running the Packers are the youngest team in football. So from a core that young, it just seems natural to expect some improvement. And I view a team that was already good at everything, take a leap in the pass game, get a little bit better overall. I think they can be awesome. And I know there's one team that maybe it's very surprising I have them above. I just think that team has more questions and has taken a bit of a step back where Green Bay's taken a step forward.
I am shocked. I am shocked you have them behind the Lions. Or ahead of the Lions, excuse me. Yeah,
well, I'm a shocking guy, Logan.
That does surprise me. I'm still rocking with Detroit.
All right. Well, in my 7th spot, I have a team that I thought you would rock with until the day you died, and then I realized that you weren't really about them like that. I've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in my 7th spot, and this is pretty much because I think their offense is completely insane. And I think this could be a team that is scoring 30-plus points per game routinely. Their defense is going to be fine. They were a pretty average group last year. I think that there are some holes here. The lack of a high-end individual pass rusher, that matters for them. But I still think that they are going to be a very solid defense overall. I think they're a defense that can mix things up. I like Todd Bowles a lot as the defensive mind. And then it's really just like if you can hold your own defensively, and then on offense, you can dominate teams in the trenches like I expect them to. I think it's an elite offensive line. You can run with elite efficiency, which they did last year, and they've got 3 different good running backs. Bucky Irving was a revelation. Obviously, Rashad White brings a different dimension, what he can do in the receiving game. And Sean Tucker was really effective when he played last year. So there's that dominant run game. The passing attack was already super explosive, very efficient, and they hit on a lot of those big chunk plays. And now they add Ibuka to like already a great receiving tandem. They could have 3 awesome wide receivers this year with a good quarterback. You just put all that together, and it's very easy for me to see how Tampa Bay can just stack points and points and points on people in a way that is super replicable. It doesn't require heroics from any one player. It's just like, you look across the board, we are better than you offensively. And legitimately, going into this year, I think they have replaced Detroit and probably Philly as the most stacked offense in the NFL. And by that, I don't mean like purely the best offense, because there are teams that have like superhero quarterbacks who can just be so transformative as offensive engines. They don't need the most stacked offense to be the best offense. But when you just look at that position, that position, that position, that position.
Baltimore?
Well, I think that the Buffalo is the best offense in football to me. Baltimore is another team, though, that has that exact same case. But when it just comes to, again, overall talent across the board offensively, I take Tampa Bay over anybody else. And that's the formula for them. And I think they can get enough stops. Like, I know there's a team you're very high on, Washington, who also is going to have a dynamic offense. But I think that defense is much more concerning to me.
Yeah, I mean, I have the Commanders in my 6th spot in my next one. I don't have any beef with Tampa Bay being here. Tampa Bay, like Minnesota, I think has a very good opportunity to crack my list either by the end of the year or in the beginning, depending on how they look. I think they might have that edge rusher in the room that you're talking about, though. Kalijah Kancey had 7.5 sacks in 12 games last year. I loved him as a prospect. I thought it was a little strange that they were getting Kancey when they already had a guy like Vita Vea, but they moved, Vea's always inside, so they've had Kancey at that edge spot, and I think as he gets more comfortable, he just has a rare combination of like speed and strength for a guy that is this compact. He's 6 foot, 280 pounds, and I thought he was one of my favorite players in the 2023 draft class, and I thought the Bucs got a steal. Like I love, man, I'm a sucker if you're like a speedy defensive tackle. Like I loved Ed Oliver too. And I haven't been disappointed with Ed Oliver. I just thought he was going to be like a bona fide superstar, best in the league kind of guy. But if there is, I think Diaby could have a bounce back year. I thought he had a down campaign. And if there is a guy that's going to break out and I think maybe be double-digit kind of sack totals, I think it could be Kancey. So if that box gets checked, I mean, what kind of hole does Tampa Bay have, man?
Yeah, no, it's a very fair question. I think there's also another candidate because Kancey, I think, does have the potential not to take like that leap to being one of the premier guys, but to being very good. Could he have 10 sacks in a season? Yes. He's definitely flawed as a run defender, but as a pass rusher, he is pretty good. I think Diaby has ability as well. And they bring in Hassan Reddick.
And Vita Vea
Vita's
just eats up the inside.
Vita's a monster. But when it comes to a guy coming off the edge, Reddick just had a real down season, but we have seen him be super productive as a pass rusher before. So you're right. There are candidates in that room, and then you know that Levante is just going to be phenomenal for you. The secondary overall, pretty solid. Play calling, good. So, yeah, like there's not really a hole. I just don't think this is a high-level defense. It's not an upper echelon defense.
Bowles always does get the most out of his defenses, though. Man, all this fucking Bucs talk makes me feel like I'll slot the I'm sorry, CJ. I'll slot the Bucs in at 10.
Thank you. It's just about a roster. Could you imagine that trench battle? Well, actually,
I'm sorry,
Texans
Baker. I'm so sorry, Baker. I can't believe I did that to you, man. I can't believe I did that.
I forgive you.
I hope that Reddick bounces back. I don't know, man. I'm always weary of a guy who isn't fully bought into his team and he's turned 30, and so I'm a little bit worried, but he's not a big swing factor for this team. But he is like you said, it's a very low value, low risk, high reward kind of evaluation. So damn it, man, the fucking Baker Mayfield, man.
I love how
got
you
me.
Make
you got me.
Good. I'm glad to see it, Logan. Talk about your Commanders though, because you're all in on them. Your hot take for them was
they're going to the Super Bowl.
Whoa!
I mean, I'm in on the Commanders. I was so blown away last season with Jaden Daniels and how exceptional he was, and I think this offense is going to be near the best in the league. Again, and I added this caveat, I think it's very important to add, Terry McLaurin has to still be on this roster. So if McLaurin's not here, I'm quite ready to sell all of my Commander stock. And this isn't to disparage Jaden. I think Jaden could get this offense to top 12-ish results by himself, with an average team around him. But McLaurin is the bona fide number one kind of guy that takes this offense up a notch, where I am fearful of their explosivity. And, yeah, I think they're going to be a top 5 unit this year with the addition of Deebo Samuel, who I'm not super high on as a number 1. I think is a good number 2, is an upgrade from what they had last season. I think they've got a really potent rushing attack with all the different options that they can have in. There's always going to be somebody fresh back there. If it's Brian Robinson, who they are rumored to be shopping, apparently Bill Krosky-Merritt is lighting it up in preseason, and so they're entertaining moving BRJ, who I thought was excellent last year. I thought it would be kind of foolish to move Brian Robinson. But if it is Bill out of the backfield, if they're turning to Austin Eckler, if it's McNichols, the beauty of having an offense run the way Kingsbury does and a quarterback like Jaden Daniels is, I'm not saying it doesn't matter who you have at running back, but Daniels and Kingsbury are going to enhance and make that guy better because of the threat of Jaden with his legs and running, RPOs, running play action. It just opens up so much for the rest of your offense. But it really is Jaden Daniels. He is the guy that I think makes this offense special. He is one of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL today with his dual threat abilities. How he opens up the rushing dynamic, the things that you can do with him on the move, outside of the pocket, how he can create in structure. I just think Jaden's one of those special quarterbacks, and he's going to lead some great results. I'm avoiding talking about the defense because I'm not exceptionally high on this defense. If they are an average unit, I think that is a massive success. There are players that I like. We talked about them last episode. I really like the linebacking core of Luvu and Wagner. I still like Lattimore holding it down. And the defensive line was really disappointing last year, so I'm hoping for a bounce-back campaign from Payne and Armstrong. And I'm hoping Kinlaw can produce on the inside there. The defense isn't special. It's even more of a drastic case of what you just made for the Buccaneers. The Commanders are going to have to they're going to have to win games. And ultimately, that's why they're not higher. I'm not super high on the defense, and I think the case that I was making for the Chargers, I think it's an inverse for the Commanders. I think the Commanders have a very rigid formula on how they need to win games. It's not like the Chargers where you're playing ball control defensive football. The formula for Washington is track meet. We're going to put points on the board on every single possession. It's rigid. That's why they can't be higher for me, but I think it's going to be one of the most explosive offenses in football again this season, and I'm a big-time Jaden Daniels believer, so I'm all aboard, man.
I am much lower on the Commanders than you are. And you said Houston might be our biggest difference. This is our biggest difference because you have them going to the Super Bowl. I have them missing the playoffs. Now, I have them missing the playoffs in part because I think they have an extremely difficult schedule. But I also do really worry about that defense because I think that there is a gap between like the Bucs being a solid defensive unit and this being one of the worst defenses in football last year, where they were 23rd in points allowed per drive. They were very bad against the run. They don't have that impactful edge rusher. Safety, I look at as a big potential problem for them. The entire secondary, I'm really pretty concerned about. So that's an issue with them. And they don't have a defensive mind like Todd Bowles, who makes me more confident in Group's ability to get the most out of their talent. And then offensively, even though I think the Commanders are elite, I prefer what the Bucs have just because it doesn't rest on the shoulders of one guy as much, and specifically one sophomore quarterback. Even though I think Jaden is awesome, I thought he had the greatest rookie quarterback season ever last year. I thought what he did, not just in the regular season, but also in the playoffs, was so wildly impressive. It's different when I'm talking about the Bucs knowing that they are going to have a massive advantage in the trenches every game. Where Washington is solid there, I like them adding Tunsil, but there's a gap between their offensive line and the Bucs. I think there's a significant difference in terms of the running back play that you are
You think
getting.
there's a big gap between Washington? I think Washington had one of the best offensive lines, and to me, that was the thing that got, like, I know that Jaden took the NFL by storm. I think that unit was really underrated last year, man. I thought the Commanders' O-line was really good.
I thought they were solid. I think they're a good group now with Tunsil, but I do think some of their scheme, especially if you look at a lot of the heavy screen usage, like they were kind of trying to work their way around. No, I'm not saying it was gimmicky, but I'm saying they weren't just able to say, okay, we are going to run the ball down your throat conventionally over and over again because we're just going to get insane push up front. Like these two teams engineered elite rushing attacks, but they did it in different ways. And then I look at the awesome receiver talent that they have in Tampa. Like the difference is that is a stacked offense. Washington, I'd say, has a good offensive infrastructure, but they are relying a lot on Jaden, who is definitely better than Baker. But I do think as impressive as Jaden and Washington's offense was through all of last year, down the stretch, you did see defenses adjust, become more familiar with their scheme, where they weren't just getting ahead of every set of downs as much, so picking up a lot of yardage on first down runs and screens and constantly getting to second and third and short. Like that was their formula early. Second half of the year, there was more pressure on Jaden as a drop back passer, and overall, I thought he handled it well. It's just not as easy as what they were doing early in the year. And so he took 30 sacks in the last 8 weeks. That's a big number, and that could be a little concerning when you think about extrapolating that over a full season. He did have 7 picks. He was just forced to take more risks, take some more negative plays. He did a lot of great stuff, but that's my one concern with the offense. It's not that I don't think Washington is going to be a really good offense again. It's that I don't have the confidence in them week after week, like kind of just waltzing into 30 points like a Tampa does. And then I do think that there's a significant gap defensively where I'm really worried about that with Washington. And they're going to have to play one of the toughest schedules in football.
All hail Jaden Daniels. All
Shout
hail
out, man.
Jaden Daniels.
ASU legend. I would love nothing more than to see him even improve upon what he did last year, but I do think that would be really impressive if his production looked better. Like, I think he can improve as a player, and the results might not be better just because I do think, like you said, he took the league by storm. He caught people off guard last year.
Can I pin you down? What's the
Oh, yes, absolutely.
What are you expecting offensive?
I won't tap.
Like if you could give me a number, like where do you think they're going to rank?
I think that they're still top 10. I think that they're probably hovering right around 5th, 6th, 7th, somewhere in there. But I think the defense might be 22nd, 24th, somewhere in that range. And when you're having to go up against the AFC West and the NFC North and this just like really, really tough schedule they have, that's where that becomes a concern. So they would have been my 12th team. I do like the Broncos more just because I think that roster is a good bit better.
You've got a team that they were battling with in the playoffs at number 6, though, right?
I do have the Detroit Lions in my number 6 spot. It's going to be such an interesting season for Detroit because it's such a massive offseason of change. You lose 2 great coordinators. You lose 2 great offensive linemen in Frank Ragnow and Kevin Zeitler. And in a lot of ways, I think if you look at last year, all of those pieces were crucial to their success. Like offensively, they do so much stuff at such a high level, but the foundation of it is we had a top 2 offensive line in football. We can run the ball down your throat over and over again, bully you with outside zone over and over again. That opens up the play action game. That makes our passing game more efficient. And then you also have the great play caller in Ben Johnson, who is able to kind of create explosives for you with the ability to mix up tempo, right? Hammer the run, hammer the run, hammer the run. Oh my God, all of a sudden now it's a trick play and we've taken the top off the defense. They lost some really important components in that equation. And then defensively, I think Detroit is certainly going to be more talented this year than last year just because of all the losses that they suffered down the stretch. Obviously losing Hutchinson, losing Aleem McNeil, losing Carlton Davis. He's gone now, but they bring in DJ Reed, losing Alex Anzalone for a time. Like that defense was decimated, but I think a big part of the reason they were able to hang in there defensively, find solutions, was the brilliance of Aaron Glenn. And so now you lose 2 of those great minds, one on each side of the ball. I think it's more so that we'll see a little bit of a step back with the offense, because even though they still have insane running back play, even though I still really like their weapons in the receiving game, and I think that Goff for a regular season is like a top 10-ish sort of quarterback. He can certainly execute a scheme at a high level, and he has the arm to make a lot of the throws. It's just his major limitations as a mover and a creator that are a problem, and the bozo gene kicking in for sure. But we know that he can captain an elite offense. I just think that offensive line drop-off is significant, man. And what Ragnow meant as like a captain of this offense, that does move me to think they aren't going to be as insanely efficient in the run game. The pass protection isn't going to be as insane, which I do think is really important for Goff, that you can protect at a really high level. There's a little bit of a losing Ben Johnson tax. So at the end of the day, like, I still think Detroit is really, really good. And I think they could easily be a top 10 defense because you give them a full season of healthy Hutchinson. Unfortunately, McNeil is still hurt, so hopefully he comes back at some point. But that defensive line at full strength is nuts. That safety tandem is insane. I love the linebackers. There's a lot of talent on that defense. And then offensively, like, they could easily still be a top 5 group. But the number 5 offense is a step back from what they were last year, where they're churning out 32, 33 points per game. And I think that maybe they're the number 8 offense. Like, that's where I see a little bit of a dip. I also just think it's going to be hard for them to hit the ground running with this much change. They also have a brutal, brutal schedule that they're going to have to endure. So those are some of the reasons I just have more questions about the Lions this year than I have over the last couple seasons. But I still think they're really good. I still think they have the talent to be viewed as one of the juggernauts in football once we get to the playoffs.
I mean, we don't have a huge discrepancy. Like, you have them at 6, I have them at 5. The reason they can't be higher for this is because of some of the concerns you laid out. The coordinator overhaul, more importantly, is just the Jared Goff aspect in this, is that all 4 teams above him have either completely loaded rosters or quarterbacks that I just wholeheartedly believe in more when we come to a playoff setting. They're just too talented for me to leave them out of my top 5. Like, I think you made a bunch of valid concerns and criticisms, but I just don't think the roster overhaul was really that drastic for me to leave them outside. Like, they have 2 defensive player of the year caliber guys on this roster, and Aiden Hutchinson and Brian Branch. That is scary. The linebacking core is so solid. Jack Campbell and Alex Anzalone are rock solid in the middle. Aleem McNeil and DJ Reader are monstrous in the middle, swallowing up the run game. And then I do like what we got out of Terry and Arnold. And I didn't even mention Kirby Joseph. Kirby Joseph was a beast last year, too. So, I just don't think that there was enough turnover. The offense is super, super talented. And even though they lost Ben Johnson and his creativity, it's not like they're losing all the stuff that they ran. Like, this is still a unit that is going to employ stuff that Ben Johnson was running. There's just going to be different players in place. So I don't fault you for expecting maybe a little bit of regression, because I think we should anticipate it. But I still look at this team as a 12 to 13 win kind of group. The big concern is the offensive line play. But when you've got Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell, I think that is maybe the best healthy tackle tandem in football. And, I think both of those guys are Pro Bowl, All-Pro caliber. Sewell,
Better
I love.
Than Mailata Lane Johnson.
It's Sewell. I think Sewell's the best tackle in football,
That's fine.
man.
I just don't think Taylor Decker is quite that great.
I think Taylor Decker is still a beast. So,
he's very good.
There is some change. Graham Glasgow has been a rotation lineman for them. He's lined up at tackle, at guard. He's been in the league for a while. He's going to be 33. It is weird having a center with that kind of size. They're going to have a 6'6" center, which is just kind of strange. And then Christian Mahogany is going to start at left guard most likely, and he's a 6th-round pick. So to be determined on what their offensive line looks like with those losses. They are pretty big, but I just look at this team as still one of the most talented in football. So even though they've had a lot of turnover in the offseason, I just couldn't leave them outside of my top 5. I think they're just too talented top to bottom. And Amon-Ra, I think, is still one of the best wideouts in football.
And J-Mo is so explosive, and could you get a little bit more consistency
Tim Patrick, one of the best
him?
run-blocking wideouts in football.
You got to shout out Tim Patrick, Logan. Yeah, there's a lot that makes Detroit great, but I do think they lost a couple of components of that. We'll see. It's really going to come down to the offensive line play. If we look at this group and we still say in totality, they are among the top 3 groups of ass kickers in football, then Detroit should basically be able to replicate what they've done. Maybe I'm just anticipating a little bit more of a drop there.
What sucks is if it does happen and we see real regression, it's going to feel like the Lions had a real missed opportunity and just bad luck, man. It really did feel like last year was a perfect storm for this team with the coordinators, with the offensive linemen, with the addition, and then they got bit as hard with the injury bug as any team that I've ever seen, especially defensively.
And the fact that they still improved so much defensively that, if you look at the 2023 Lions, they were winning the division, making the conference title game in spite of the defense, right? That was a problem unit for them. And then in 2024, they put together a top 8 scoring defense, even as they lose their best player and numerous key players. It was really impressive. That roster they had last year, if they had stayed fully healthy, we talk about the Eagles as being the most talented we've seen in a long time. The fully healthy Lions last year would have been right there with them. It was insane, and it is incredible that they were as good as they were in spite of the injuries. But they did go out ugly because of a lot of those defensive injuries and then a Jared Goff performance, unfortunately. Plus, get ready to learn Jaden Daniels. I'm saying that to myself because I might be sleeping on the Commanders. So we're into the top 5 now. I have Green Bay there. You have Detroit there. Seems like we've got the same 4 teams atop the league. Probably in a different order. We'll see. Who's in your 4 spot, Logan?
I've got the Chiefs in my 4 spot.
As do I. Twin.
I love the Chiefs. I've been a Chiefs supporter for a long time. Any team with Patrick Mahomes is a fucking dangerous one. So, Chiefs fans, if you're listening to this, please don't take this as any sort of disrespect. It's you guys have Patrick Mahomes and Chris Jones and one of the best coaching staffs in football. So when you've got that recipe, it's I could see the Chiefs winning a Super Bowl. I just do feel like they've lost some very important components to this championship recipe. Most notably, I think in the secondary. Over the past 2 years, they have lost L'Jarius Sneed, who was very important to their defense, and this offseason they lost Justin Reed, who I thought was awesome for them. And so there's just a little bit of turnover. Now you were starting a secondary of Trent McDuffie, who is still one of the best corners in football, Chamari Connor, who I like a lot, and then Brian Cook and Christian Fulton and Jalen Watson. To the Chiefs' credit, if there's anybody that can squeeze every bit of juice out of a defense, it's Steve Spagnuolo. Like, he is going to come up with schemes and creative blitzes and deception. Like, Spags is a genius. But it's not just the defense that I'm worried about. There's a lot of offensive line turnover. Joe Thuney is out of town, who was vitally important for this team. They had starting at tackle in the Super Bowl. Like, Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith are still as solid as ever, but they've got Juwan Taylor starting at that other spot, Mike Caliendo at left guard, Josh Simmons at left tackle. There's a lot of turnover on the offensive line that I'm not quite fond of. I think Travis Kelce is due for another season of regression where, yeah, I think Kelce will probably still be super effective in the playoffs, but like, he's just not as explosive and consistent. I think teams can do an easier job of eliminating him from being as effective. And all this in totality, I just think you're looking at a team that won 15 games last year that is probably going to be closer to that 10 to 12 range. That being said, I mean, I still look at this team as deadly, not as they are every year. I don't think this is as deadly of a team as it was in 2023. I don't think this is as deadly of a team as it was in 2024. That being said, they are still a very dangerous team. But when I look at the top three teams, I just think the rosters are all more talented top to bottom. That's the distinction that I would make. And so the Chiefs can win the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes is still the Grim Reaper. None of that has changed. The Chiefs are still very, very deadly. And I think that these four teams, to me, kind of like last year, are in a tier of their own, where I think they are separated from the pack. But to me, the Chiefs are the weakest out of these top four teams.
I have Kansas City in the 4 spot too. And I can't drop them below this, which I'm seeing some people do. I'm seeing some people go all in with their doubt the Chiefs take, the fall off is coming, and I would just be very, very cautious with that, man, because in some form or another, like, the narrative has been the Chiefs are down at some point, either going into or during the last 3 seasons. First, they lost Tyreek, and it's, oh my God, let's see what Mahomes can do now. And then they win the Super Bowl in 2022. And then 2023 was a down regular season, and especially wasn't a super strong finish, and people were questioning them because of that. And then they won the Super Bowl. And then this past year, even as they went 15-1, it was like, okay, but there were a lot of really close games in there, and the defense took a little bit of a step back, and the offense wasn't the most efficient, the most effective. They didn't seem like the most talented team on paper, and they still made it to the Super Bowl. And by the way, when I say people, in 2023, I didn't pick the Chiefs to get out of the AFC. In 2024, I didn't pick the Chiefs to get out of the AFC. So even though I've never done the sky is falling thing, I've always had a lot of respect for them. Like, they still overachieved my expectations, and so I guess they can get on me for doubting them too. This year, maybe this will be too low on the Chiefs again. You can't really overstate 5 Super Bowl appearances in 6 years, 7 straight AFC title games. Like, the standard that has been set is so ridiculous. And there is just an inherent level of faith that I have in a team with Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Chris Jones, and Steve Spagnuolo. When you talk about like those premier impact positions and a coaching staff that to me is still clearly the best combination of an offensive mind and a defensive mind in the NFL with so much experience, they're going to win a lot of games, and they are going to be in some very big time games, and they've got a really good formula to win those big time games. And I actually think this is going to be their best offense since 2022. I don't think they're going to reach those heights where that was the number 1 offense in the NFL. I just like this group of weapons the most that they've had in some time. I think that even with Kelce obviously having lost a step, he's still a very effective receiving tight end. And then you think about the totality of Rashee Rice, presuming that he doesn't serve a significant suspension. Worthy, who I think really came into his own down the stretch last year, could have a big season. Hollywood, like, just a lot of talent there in that receiving room, especially compared to what we've seen from the Chiefs over the last couple of years. The concern, though, is the offensive line, because there is a lot in flux there. You lose a staple in Tooney, who obviously you could move around on that offensive line. So you know what you've got with Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. That's great. Those guys are awesome. Everything else is a pretty big question on this offensive line. And after how things went in the Super Bowl, with that being the problem unit for them, bar none, right? Just getting eaten alive, destroyed in that battle. And then they lose Tooney. Like, it's hard not to be pretty significantly concerned about that offensive line. And so that's why I still can't view this as like one of the elite offenses. That and like their obsession with this kind of grinded out ball control, low possession style of football, which, hey, like, it works. They do extend drives. They do end up winning a lot of these close games. But there is an element of explosiveness that is missing from this offense. In the run game, it really just isn't that efficient for them. They love running the ball. They're not that good at running the ball. It's okay. That's part of their identity. I'd like to see them open things up a little bit more this year, though. I think that we could see a bit of a bounce-back production season from Mahomes in terms of regular season numbers if they let him do his thing. And then defensively, like you said, like, they took a step back last year, more so than I think I even realized in the moment, where they went from being this absolute elite force of a defense in 2023, and that was really the strength of that team, that and Mahomes. And last year, they were 24th in yards allowed per drive. They were 13th in points allowed per drive. And then on top of that, they lose Justin Reed, which is significant to me. So I still think the defense last year was better than some of those bottom line numbers, just because, like, when it comes to a big game, when it comes to a big play, Chris Jones, McDuffie, Spags, like, those are just dudes who in their own ways can influence massive swing plays and are scary in those spots. But like, the overall talent of the defense matters. And I just don't think the overall talent of the defense is that good right now. All that being said, those are the reasons I'm a little lower on the Chiefs. I think this is a year where they probably won't be in the Super Bowl. I also think there's just two great teams in the AFC who I do happen to prefer this year when I look at the totality of their roster. But if we get to a game in January and it comes down to it, it wouldn't surprise me if the Chiefs still find a way to make some big defensive plays, to scheme up a hell of a game, to get you to a spot where it's 24 apiece and you put the ball in Patrick Mahomes' hands for a game-winning drive and he's going to go out there and win it for you. Like, to say that you can't see that outcome to me is disingenuous, because probably at some point over these last 3 years, you have doubted the Chiefs in one of these ways, and the outcome has basically been that. So I am going to have them at 4, but they're locked in to the 4 spot still. I can't have them lower than this.
I have not doubted the Chiefs, and they have come
wasn't
through
talking to
basic.
you.
Yeah,
that
they've
was
basically
the metaphorical you. I was speaking to the general public.
They've basically come through every time. So it is
man.
strange.
You got to give Logan Camden credit for picking the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl going into the 2023 playoffs. Maybe that doesn't seem that bold in hindsight.
I mean, back
there
to
were
back.
not a lot of people saying that.
I picked them.
Well, but that's
I feel
the
like
year
I picked them 3
because
straight.
they were down in the regular season.
That was.
Because, like, 2022, they were just a great team end-to-end that year.
I've been locked into the Chiefs in my one spot for basically 3 straight seasons where I've viewed them as almost impenetrable in that spot. So this is the lowest I've been on the Chiefs, but like you said, man, who would be surprised? Oh my God, Mahomes won another Super Bowl. Tom Brady did it. You're not going to be surprised.
Yeah.
That being said,
they did get penetrated by the Eagles, I will say.
Hey,
but
yo.
people who are like, it's the Broncos' year. We talked about this, but the last time that the Chiefs didn't win the division, was it to the 2015 Broncos? They've won it every year since 2016. Like, they are the pillar of consistency, man. The pillar of consistency.
Dating back to pre-Mahomes, man. That's some Alex Smith days.
Exactly.
Yeah, bro. In my 3 spot is a team that has fallen victim to the Chiefs' success time and time again. I have the Buffalo Bills in my 3 spot, and if you watched our one hot take about AFC teams, this is what I was alluding to at the beginning of this episode. I do think there are 2 rosters that are better than Buffalo's, but if it came down to it in the playoffs, I'm going to take the quarterback out of these teams that I believe in the most, and that quarterback is Josh Allen. I think that Josh Allen has the propensity to go toe-to-toe with anybody. When I compare them to the 2 teams that I have above them, do think Buffalo has a few players that I'm a little more concerned about. First, I'm just going to ask you because you are our resident Bills expert.
Please don't ask me about the safeties.
I'm going to ask you about the secondary.
Yeah.
Is Trey White going to start for you guys at corner?
So Trey White is going to start, and weirdly, I'm kind of optimistic about it, which maybe is irrational. I just think, even though he has clearly taken some major steps back, right, and I don't think has been good outside of Buffalo, there is an aspect of a McDermott defense being able to get the most out of DBs who really know how to play within the scheme. And Trey White knows this scheme like the back of his hand. So I'm not nearly as worried about that as I am safety. Also, they obviously drafted Maxwell Hairston intending for him to play, and then he got hurt, but he's going to be back at some point. So they let Rasul Douglas walk. Overall, I still feel pretty good about the corner group just because Benford is a stud. I really, really like Taron Johnson. And then if you give me Hairston coming in as a high-profile rookie, the experience of Trey White, there's talent there. It's the Cole Bishop, DeMar Hamlin. Now we're talking about maybe starting a fifth-round rookie in Jordan Hancock. Like, that's the spot that scares me a lot.
And that's really the only reason why the Bills are in my 3 spot. They add Bosa. I don't think Bosa is what he was, but I think he's probably going to be one of the best pass rushers that they've had over the past few years. He should be a real high-quality difference maker. I think Ed Oliver should bounce back. Rousseau should have a good season, and I love the linebacking core with a healthy Milano and Bernard. So defensively, the secondary is my only question mark, and then I know exactly what I'm getting with this Buffalo Bills offense. Josh Allen is Superman. He's going to put this group on his back, and they are going to be one of the best offenses in football. I mean, just year after year, no matter the circumstances, like they finally added a running game, and they gave James Cook an extension, and he is, for my money, one of the best running backs in football, I think, especially dual threat. Like, the guy can catch, he can run between the tackles, he can run outside, like, he's a total package. So, and Josh always, people will look at this receiving group and be underwhelmed. Josh always gets the most out of his receivers. He's one of those guys that doesn't need a lead number one. If that's, Shakir or Coleman. He's going to distribute the ball evenly to all these guys. Everybody's going to eat, and the offense is going to be great. So really, the only reason why they're not higher is I think there are some offensive lines that are a little more loaded. There are some teams with better skill position talent, and I don't really have that glaring question about the secondary the way about my top 2 teams the way I do about Buffalo. But I've got Buffalo going to the Super Bowl. I think Josh Allen's going to put this team on his back and rip through the playoffs.
This is so funny because when we did our hot take episode, I feel like there was this vibe of you picking the Bills to the Super Bowl, being optimistic, and then me kind of coming in and pouring a little cold water on the both of us and being maybe a little bit of a bummer and a pessimist. That being said, I have the Bills in my number 2 spot, so I actually have them higher than you in my contender rankings because I don't think you can overstate just how insane the floor that the Bills have set for themselves is, where over the last 5 years, they are averaging more than 12 wins a season. They are averaging a playoff win and a half every season. Like, they have been the most consistently great team in football outside of course, the Kansas City Chiefs. That's the mountain to climb, but the Chiefs are looking a little bit down this year. I do really like this Bills team, and I think that starts with the fact that they have the best quarterback in football, in my opinion. Josh Allen, who has always been one of the all-time great freak creators with his insane arm and size and athleticism and creation as a runner and his ability to just do unbelievable stuff out of the pocket to try and make such special, high-leverage, high-value, big-time throws. That's why the Bills have been an automatic elite offense over the last half-decade. That's what he has made them every year. This past year, he took a leap because he cut out the turnovers to a wildly impressive extent. He cut out all negative plays, literally had the lowest negative play rate ever of a quarterback with that sort of volume, just like didn't take any sacks either. He was unbelievably smart and efficient and precise, and he had an offensive system that allowed him to not have to try to do as much every week. He had the most effective run game that he's had. He had the best offensive line. He had the best play caller who was pretty good at finding that balance of running on early downs and incorporating more screens and understanding, even though we don't have a true wide receiver one, we can do all this other stuff at a high level, and we can trust Josh to control the game at such a high level and then be a superhero when we need him to, that we can go out there and drop 31 points per game on you. And that's exactly what they did. I love this stat, but before they sat everybody in week 18, they were one of 6 offenses this century to average 3 points per drive. So if you're going to look at the receiver room and like make a big deal about that, man, I just don't know. I just don't really know where you're getting that idea from. Like, they were flat out a dominant offense without a wide receiver one. I do think Shakir is really good. I like the Josh Palmer addition. Is somebody going to have to step up in a big playoff moment, make a big play, maybe have a big game? Like, probably. And that's where you do look at Keon Coleman, who was very inconsistent last year. Can he be a more reliable threat in the passing game? Dalton Kincaid had a down, disappointing year as a receiving weapon, and obviously last play of the season, I understand it's a relatively difficult catch, but Josh makes an insane kind of prayer of a throw, and it actually hits Kincaid in the hands. He doesn't make that play. Kind of emblematic of a disappointing season from him, but he has the talent as a route runner and a pass catcher maybe to bounce back. So there's enough dudes there, and really just like the formula doesn't rely on elite receiver play because of how great they are and everything else, and really because of Josh, but also what they've built in the trenches and the run game. So I know what I'm getting from this offense in a big game. I don't trust anybody more than Josh Allen. The dude is top of the list all time in playoff touchdown to turnover ratio. He's literally number one. He's number one in total yardage per game that we've ever seen from a playoff quarterback. He's top 3 in total touchdowns per game. Like, he's been incredible in those spots, and he's never been better as a quarterback than he is right now and than he was this past year. It's all going to come down to the defense, and that's where you have to ask, is Bosa the pass rusher that Buffalo needs to make the difference, to make up for the fact that in big playoff games, this team has been unable to really be disruptive defensively, to put pressure on a Patrick Mahomes. I talked about this in our hot take episode, but like, the pressure numbers in their playoff losses are just pathetic. It's single-digit pressures over the course of a full football game with your season on the line more often than not. So,
do you think that has more to do with personnel or play calling?
Well, I think that there are issues on both fronts, but when I look at the literal pressure numbers, I do put that on the front four just not being able to get pressure with any sort of consistency, because yes, I think that there have been instances absolutely where McDermott needed to be more aggressive and he needed to have more variety as a play caller and maybe dialing up some more selective blitzes, playing more man instead of just dropping into the same predictable kind of zone looks. But also, like, the best formula to beat Patrick Mahomes, the formula we've seen executed by teams that have forced him into hellish playoff games. We've seen it twice. The Bucs did it and the Eagles did it. They got pressure with 4. They weren't blitzing a lot. They were just overwhelming you at the line of scrimmage, and the Bills have never been remotely close to that. They've never really been able to make Patrick Mahomes sweat behind the line of scrimmage. So that's maybe the biggest thing. And I do think that Bosa is still good, posted a solid pressure rate last year, good run defender. He's not a star, though. And, of course, they need him to stay healthy. So I like it as a value add. I'm optimistic about his addition. But it's going to come down to, like, the collective having to step up. It's not like it's going to be Joey Bosa who comes in and now in the AFC title game, oh, he's got 7 pressures and 2 sacks. Like, it's going to be him playing up to his potential, making a difference. Greg Rousseau, who was really good in the regular season, making some big plays in a playoff game. Ed Oliver being impactful as an interior pass rusher and run defender. Like, can that defensive front collectively elevate in a big playoff game is going to be the key determining factor for this team's ability to win the Super Bowl or not. And I am optimistic this is the best defensive line that the Bills have had. I like AJ Epinesa as a depth piece too, but like, there have been multiple regular seasons or multiple times where on paper I look at the Bills defensive line and I go, yeah, they're pretty good. They have to show it when it matters most, and they still don't have that game changer, so it's going to have to be in the aggregate, producing enough pressures. That's one concern, just because I don't view that as a strength of this team, but I can see the potential there. Like, I can see the Bosa thing really panning out, Rousseau being a little bit better this year. What I'm really worried about is safety. That's where I'm really scared. I don't trust Cole Bishop. We have not seen starting caliber safety play from him. We haven't seen starting caliber safety play from DeMar Hamlin. And now, like, the buzz, the rumor is maybe we do go to Jordan Hancock, who again is a 5th-round rookie, which inherently scares me. That worries me because that is a hole that I don't see anywhere on the Ravens roster, that I don't see anywhere on the Eagles roster. That's my reservation. That's the reason the Bills aren't number 1 on this list. Like, it's just a couple of defensive issues that were a concern last year and that were problematic, and that remains the case. So can the Bills overcome that to win it all? Absolutely. Because I think you know what you're getting from the linebackers. I feel good about the corners. I think McDermott, although I have my issues with him as a coach, he's a good regular season defensive coach. I actually do credit him for wanting to play more man against the Chiefs last year, and then Benford got hurt, and that fucked up the adjustment because they lost their best corner. Like, it really is just going to come down to, do they have the defensive dudes? And yeah, McDermott has to be willing to take some chances defensively, him and Bobby Babich. But I know what I'm getting from the offense. And I know the Bills are going to win 12-plus games and win their division and win a playoff game, and we'll see them in probably the AFC title game and maybe the divisional round. But, like, I expect them to be among the last 4. It's going to come down to these little things. It's not going to be about Josh. It's not going to be about the offense. I know what I'm getting there, and it's going to be incredible.
Yeah, I think they have that kind of ceiling. I don't know. Time will tell on the safety and the defensive play, but I mean, I could see the Bills cracking my number 1 spot by the end of the year. I mean, if those things get addressed, like, I believe in Josh that much, and I believe in this offense. He's so fucking consistent. Like, if we're just talking regular season results, there's been no better QB over the past, like, 5 years. If we were just looking at, like, the regular season, man, like, Mahomes just objectively has not put up results the way the Bills have consistently, the way Josh has.
Just for the last 2 years, because before that, Mahomes' regular season numbers are ridiculous.
I mean, I'm saying the Bills, but, like, I mean, the Bills have been, number 2 and number 6, and, like, they've been up there too. Yeah.
The Bills have been a top 3 offense 4 of the last 5 seasons. In the 1 year that they weren't, they were number 6. So it is insane. I do think that Josh and Lamar are the 2 best regular season quarterbacks in football. And then Josh is the guy who's also been phenomenal in the playoffs. So enough glaze about him. I do want to ask just real quick, though. I don't want to spoil this, but I'm just curious. You have the Bills as your number 3 contender. You have Washington in your 6th spot, but that's your Super Bowl pick, right? So, So are you taking the Bills to win the Super Bowl, even though they're not number 1 on your list? Is that your cheeky pick? It's not that cheeky, I guess. I think they're co-betting favorites.
Yeah, I'm taking the Bills to win the Super Bowl.
Hell yeah, brother. Hell yeah, brother. Hell yeah, brother. Okay, so in my number 3 spot, I have a team that won the Super Bowl last year and I believe will return to the Super Bowl this year, and that's the Eagles. And they were a dominant Super Bowl champion last year. I think it's important to emphasize just how ridiculous the form that Philly finished the season in really was. Like, after their week 5 bye, they were pretty clearly the best defense in football. They ended the year overall first by far in total yards allowed, first in yards per play allowed by a decent amount, first in yards per pass attempt allowed. Just incredible secondary play, phenomenal play up front, really good stuff from the linebackers, an all-pro kind of season from Zach Bond. And they finished the season on a 16-1 run. And their only loss was a game in which Jalen Hurts got hurt, and it happened in the final seconds to their future NFC Championship opponent. So they were basically perfect for the last 17 weeks of the season. And the reason for that is that their roster was just unmatched in football when you consider how banged up the Lions were. And that roster is still stacked. Offensively, they're pretty much running it back. They've got the best running back in football in Saquon. They've got an elite wide receiver duo, if not the best receiver duo in football. They've got the best offensive line in football. They've got a good quarterback. They do lose Kellen Moore, but there's just still so much talent there. And defensively, they're still stacked. Carter and Davis are monsters up front. Zach Bond is a monster. Nolan Smith is good. The secondary is sick with how they overhauled it this past year. Shout out Nakobe Dean. There's a lot of talent on that defense. They did suffer some losses, though. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, they trade. Darius Slay, they lose. Milton Williams, they lose. Josh Sweat, they lose. Brandon Graham retires. So they do probably take a bit of a step back on that side of the ball. And I do think that there's a question mark at edge right now with Sweat gone, because he was the guy who, especially in the Super Bowl, stepped up, made some massive plays, generated a lot of pressures. You know that you're going to get like monster interior pressure from Carter and Davis, and they're going to eat up double teams, and they're going to really help collapse the pocket in that way. But you need somebody who's got the athleticism off the edge who can finish those plays, and that would be maybe a question for this Philly defense right now. And then the secondary, like, there is some change. I still view that group as pretty loaded, though, with what you got out of DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell last year and knowing what you're getting from Reed Blankenship. Adoree Jackson's got to fill Slay's shoes. I don't think that that's like a big downgrade. And then you got Sidney Brown. He's stepping into a bigger role. I do think he's played well overall, though. So I still really, really like this defense. But I do think like that was the strength of this team last year, them being the best defense in football, them being elite at every level defensively. If you look at their path to the Super Bowl, Packers game, absolutely shut that team down, held them to 10 points. Rams game, they had 5 sacks, they had 2 takeaways, and the Super Bowl, as good as the offense was in that game, and Philly's offense was awesome and Jalen Hurts was awesome, they held the Chiefs scoreless until the final minute of the third quarter. And they posted, what was it, a 50-something% pressure rate through 3 quarters with like almost no blitzes. So that was all around just a bludgeoning. But the most impressive part, the reason that was such a blowout, was their unbelievable defense. And so, even though I think they're still going to be really good, if they take a little bit of a step back there, that does matter, because even though I think the offense is also really good and has so much talent all around, I don't view it as being a Ravens or a Bills level offense. And much of that has to do with the quarterback play, where those two guys are superhumans. Those two guys are elite passers of the football. Those two guys are special rushing threats. Like, they are just straight up offensive engines. As good as Philly is in the trenches and the skill position talent, you cannot deny the inconsistencies in the passing attack this past year. Even though I thought Hurts played very well in the last 2 games of the playoff run, there can be inconsistencies with him as a decision maker, being able to quickly get the ball out with timing, his processing. Like, they just don't have that sort of A-plus offense that Buffalo and Baltimore do. And importantly, those are teams that have A-plus quarterbacks, and Philly doesn't have that. Obviously, they are still a bona fide Super Bowl threat in spite of that. They won the Super Bowl this past year. But with the little bit of loss of defensive talent, it's enough to drop them to number 3. I still think they're the best team in the NFC. I still think they're probably the best roster in football. I still think they have a path to being like top 5 on both sides of the ball, closer to like just 5th best offense. I don't think they're going to be, again, a top 2, top 3 kind of offense, but really good still. That's every reason that Philly still has to be in this top tier to me. The margins are so slim between the top 3 for me.
Yeah, I've got Philly at my 2 spot. I think they've got the second most talented roster in football. I think Philadelphia is going to be fine. I would be surprised if they didn't get to the divisional round of the title game again this year. And I think they may take a little bit of a step back defensively, but I don't think it's going to be drastic. I mean, Mitchell and DeJean are home run hits as corners. And if there's a guy that's going to break out here, you're talking about them needing to find that guy who's going to pressure the QB. It's Nolan Smith to me. I think Nolan Smith is probably primed to be a Pro Bowl or all-pro caliber guy. Like, no disrespect to like Milton Williams or Josh Sweat. Like, those guys are monstrous, but I think Nolan Smith is really going to come into his own this year and be that kind of guy that's going to bring that extra pressure that can terrorize offenses. But you laid it out. I don't really have a ton to add on Philadelphia. They're loaded ridiculously. The offensive line is still one of the best in football. I think Saquon is going to eat all year. The difference is my level of faith in the quarterback position and easy offense. And I wonder, with the defense taking just enough of a step back, I wonder if that means that Jalen Hurts has to do more in individual games. They do change play callers. Like, I wonder if those little minute differences make the difference.
I want to be clear, though. We're nitpicking Philly because that's kind of what you have to do when they're coming off such a dominant run. And, like, I just want to be so clear about the fact that when I talk about a little bit of a defensive drop-off, I don't expect Philly to be less than a top 5 defense this year. They were just, again, pretty clearly the best defense in football last year. And that was like the backbone of them being as dominant as they were.
Yeah. I just think one
Fangio's
roster's
done a great job with this defense.
I think one roster's just more talented.
So, Logan, we have the same team in our number one spot. This is really interesting to me. Why are the Baltimore Ravens in your top spot?
I mean, I give this spiel all the time, but they have the greatest and best quarterback running back tandem in NFL history. It's not close, particularly. There's never been a 1-2 punch like Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. Lamar enhances Derrick. Derrick enhances Lamar. They're already two of the top 5 best guys at their position still in football to this day. I think the receiving core got better by adding a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. Like, I don't think D-Hop is obviously what he was when he was like the best receiver in football, 7-8 years ago, but he's still a good number 3. Zay Flowers is a number 1. He is that good. If Mark Andrews could somehow equip the clutch gene, there would be no issues with him and his game. The offensive line is still loaded. And then defensively, the Ravens were the best defense in football from week 11 on. They were just destructive. Like, once they put it together in the secondary and got their scheme figured out and right and their play calling right, there was no better defense than the Ravens, and they are loaded. Matabike is a Pro Bowl, All-Pro level guy up front. I think their linebacking core is loaded with another All-Pro, Depoy kind of guy in Roquan Smith. And I am so jealous of them having Odafe Owe and Trenton Simpson as supplemental linebackers. And they lost Kyle Hamilton for a little bit of last year, and he, to me, is a Defensive Player of the Year caliber guy. I think he's the best safety in football. He's the anchor, but then they're flanked by Nate Wiggins, Marlon Humphrey, and then they just added a guy in Jair Alexander. Like, I just kind of feel like the Ravens are what the Eagles were last year, in my opinion. Not to that extent. I think that's a comically loaded roster. What I mean by that is I just think the Ravens have the best roster in football. When I look at them top to bottom, elite defense, elite offensive line, loaded position groups. The difference to me that puts them over the top and in my one spot is Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. They have a year together now. Lamar doesn't have a major flaw. Now,
yeah,
I am going to take the Bills to win because I have more faith in Josh in the playoffs. But as we're ranking it right now, I just think the Ravens have the most loaded team in football. It's pretty simple. That's why they're number 1.
They're my number 1 too, and I'm taking them to win the Super Bowl this year. And I've been doing some reflecting, Logan, because when we were talking about the Ravens in our Hot Take episode, I was saying, like, this is the highest that I've been on the Ravens. And then you pointed out, and as I reflected on it more, I was like, okay, in 2023, I thought they were going to the Super Bowl. In 2024, last year, I thought they were going to the Super Bowl before the Zay Flowers injury, and then I did pick the Bills to beat them, but the margins were just that thin between those two teams. But you just think about, like, the totality of the expectations and what we have seen on paper from these Ravens teams and then what we've seen from them in the regular season, and the fact that they've only won 3 playoff games in the Lamar Jackson era, like, it really is pretty remarkable, man. It's pretty remarkable because it feels like something has to kind of go catastrophically wrong every time, and yet it does. Like, if you think about that Chiefs AFC title game, the Zay Flowers fumble, Lamar having multiple turnovers, like, somehow you only put up 10 points in that game against a great Chiefs defense, but, like, that was kind of a what the hell? This Ravens team that we watched all year, and they were the best team in the conference all year, that's what they do in the AFC title game. And then last year, like, a couple of just what the fuck Lamar turnovers, and then the Mark Andrews drop.
To that team, they add Derrick Henry. Lamar throws, 40-plus TDs.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
And down the stretch, it's like, okay, cool. The only question about this team earlier in the year was, are they going to play up to their defensive potential? And then after week 11, they were number 1 defensively in, like, every meaningful category. And then it's still a divisional round exit. So that's the weird thing that you have to, I guess, consider with this Baltimore team. That being said, I just think they're too good. And I do think that Lamar is better than he's ever been. And I do think that they are just such an exceptional all-around football team. And again, I do see a hole with the Bills. I have a couple of questions defensively. With the Eagles, maybe they take a little bit of a step back defensively, and I don't view the offense on being at this same level. I think about Baltimore, and truly, like, it has been on the playoff offense, and it mostly has been on Lamar over the years. And I don't want to treat every year the same because I think that Lamar played better in the playoffs last year than he ever has before. That being said, he still cost them big time with a couple of really bad turnovers where the Bills just played a cleaner game. And overall, like, Baltimore has had 5 top 3 scoring defenses in the Lamar era. And what's really interesting is you look at the playoff stuff, and just kind of out of curiosity, I was going through these numbers for all of the different elite AFC quarterbacks who we've seen. And if you look at the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes, they average like more than 29 points per game in the playoffs, and they allow 24. The Bills average 27.5 points per game. They allow 24. The Ravens allow 18.6 points per game in the playoffs in the Lamar era. And they have 3 wins because they score 18.6 points per game. Like, it really is remarkable, and it is so disappointing. And yet I look around the league and I just think they're the scariest team. That defense rounded into such ridiculous form last year. The secondary is elite, maybe the best in football. I really like the linebackers. They had the number 1 run defense last year. The question, like, if you were to point at one, is similar to the Bills in the sense of, like, they don't have that premier pass rusher. So do they have the pass rush to get it all done? But even there, they were second in the NFL in sacks last year. Like, their pressure rate wasn't very good. They actually didn't do a good job of getting pressure against the Bills in that game. But the defense is absolutely without any holes. They should be really good at everything and awesome overall. And then offensively, man, it's very simple. It's like you said, it's the greatest quarterback running back combination we've ever seen. It's the greatest rushing attack we've ever seen, with a version of Lamar who is now better passing the ball than ever before, who has a better group of weapons than ever before. I mean, like, there have been years where Lamar was dragging bad receiving cores, and just with his dual threat, incredible ability, he was propping them up as an offense, solely the engine. Now you have a group of pass catchers with Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely and Rashad Bateman, and I'm not going to say that that's top tier, but it's pretty good. And so it kind of feels like if Lamar is able to play up to his potential and the Ravens stay healthy, like, they should just be the favorite. And I get it if you've heard that before. I still don't think this team has ever been this good, though. Last year was very close, but then they did have the Flowers injury. And even last year, they didn't hit the ground running defensively. Like, if they check every box that they can check and play up to their potential, this team could win 15 games. They could roll to a Super Bowl, Logan. They could be the best defense in the NFL and the best offense. Like, all of that potential is within them, and that's why I have to have them at number 1.
Well, and I was going to make a couple of points that we've made about other teams. You were talking about the Bills and their success in division. Another thing why I think the Ravens have the edge here is, like, they're just concretely above every team in their division, and, like, they should coast to a, not coast, but they should definitely be the 1 seed, like, when I look around, them or Buffalo, because, like, I think Kansas City is just going to have their hands full with their division and stuff like that. But
yeah,
another thing, like, Baltimore doesn't have the kind of turnover that we're talking about with these other teams. Sure, they lost players, but they're also returning Todd Monken again as offensive coordinator, and you saw unprecedented levels of success with their offense last season. Obviously, you're going to be great with Lamar and Derrick Henry, but I think Monken enhanced them. Zach Orr is coming back as defensive coordinator, and they figured out there's also a level of continuity with this roster, too, that you're not getting with some of these other units, and that's a big thing when we're talking about the NFL. So
yeah,
it feels like it, man. It feels like one of these years Baltimore just has to break through. Ironically, I'm not picking that to be this year, but it does feel imminent.
It does feel like both they and the Bills are going to break through one of these years. Lord knows. But the Ravens, I think, do have the more complete roster right now. That being said, it is still really close for me between the two because I do have a incredible faith in Josh Allen. He is still, to me, the best quarterback. As great as Lamar is, I still take Josh over him in a playoff format. And the totality of the Bills' offense, I do slightly prefer. The one thing that, like, maybe some people might be a little bit down on the Ravens with, outside of what we've discussed, is like a Derrick Henry fall off. I would just never predict that. Like, I understand the history of running backs who are north of 30. he did rush for 1,900 yards, 16 touchdowns on 6 yards per carry last year. So I personally would not be in that game. I think Derrick Henry is a top 3 running back in football. I think we still talk about him that way after this coming season. I think he is an outlier freak. He happens to be 6'2", 250 pounds, and just like in every way, an absolute outlier at the running back position. So they check the most boxes to me. That's what it comes down to, and that's why they are number 1 on my list. And for now, they are the pick. But the Bills are right there with them. The Eagles are right there with them. And I can never write off the Chiefs. When we're talking about like the true contenders, that's where there's a delineation to me. Those are the big 4. Thank you guys, as always, for listening. We hope you enjoyed. If you did, then as always, there is plenty more NerdSesh content on our YouTube channel. We've got all of our NFL season preview stuff, as we mentioned, hot takes about every team in the entire football league. We rank the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. And, of course, we've got so much juicy NBA content. We've ranked everything under the sun in the NBA now and historically this summer. And we've got some great trivia collabs. So you can watch all of those. You can listen to all those full episodes across all audio platforms. And you can follow us across social media, TikTok and Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at @nerd_sesh to see all of our daily trivia content, some original TikToks there, to see Logan oiled up twerking. All of that stuff is across social. You can also join our Discord if you want to request more videos of Logan oiled up twerking. We will provide them for a very, very small fee of 5 cents. So, with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Breber.
I have been Diddy.
I thought you were going to say I've been oiled up twerking. You don't want to be Diddy.
I thought that's what you were kind of alluding. That's who I sounded like with that description.
I don't think about nasty things like that, Logan. I just think about the art of you oiling up twerking. There's no freak off involved. There's nothing untoward. It's just a man expressing himself.
It's very moral and just.
I think so. And I think it's beautiful. And I think it's the best way you can express yourself. So, with that, one last time, this has been NerdSesh. Not one last time in the sense that we're going off the air. There's going to be more NerdSesh after this, okay? But this has been NerdSesh.